Hello, Chipmunk and Chipette fans. My name is Grandy Tamias, the speculative evolved species of upright walking chipmunk, and welcome back to another Alvin and the Chipmunks elaboration video. Today's topic being, are the Sevilles and the Chipettes vegetarians? Now, some of you might be thinking, what kind of question is this, and why does it matter? Admittedly, it's not something I would have noticed or questioned when I was younger, but as we'll talk about later with the history of the franchise, it kind of does matter a lot. And normally you might think of real chipmunks as animals that eat just nuts and berries, so before we question whether the Alvin and the Chipmunks cast do eat meat, we must ask, can a chipmunk eat meat? The answer is an absolute yes. They can actively hunt insects, small amphibians, reptiles, they've been known to raid bird nests for their eggs, and scavenge on just about any sort of carrion. If not strictly for food, they've also been known to seek out some of these things just to gnaw on bones in order to obtain supplemental calcium and phosphorus, or to wear down their ever-growing incisors. Of course, the characters in the franchise aren't real chipmunks. We determined a long time ago that they would have to be their own unique species, so let's get into the meat of the matter, or lack thereof. Throughout the franchise, things have been a little inconsistent as far as their diet is concerned. I'm not going to go through every single instance of meat consumption or anything else that is excluded from vegetarian diets, but I'll try to cover as many as possible. In the Alvin Show episode, Stanley the Eagle, the chipmunks feed the titular eagle hot dogs. And there are a few other instances in the Ross Bagdasarian Sr. era that imply that the chipmunks themselves do like hot dogs. In the song Alvin's Harmonica, Theodore says, "Hot dog," when he's agreeing with Dave that he's ready to sing. And in a commercial for Jell-O, Alvin even makes a batch of Jell-O with a hot dog wiener sticking out of it. Well, people certainly didn't make an innuendo out of this. Nope, not at all. Moving to the 1980s era, in the very first episode, The C-Team, Theodore spots Mr. T, yes, that Mr. T, eating at a steakhouse. When Alvin notices Theodore looking through the window, he says, "Theodore, this is no time for food," implying that he thought Theodore was hungry. And what else would he assume Theodore would have been looking for to eat in a steakhouse, if not something with meat? Towards the end of Season 1, in the episode May the Greatest Chipmunk Win, when Theodore is helping Eleanor get accustomed to the school cafeteria, he suggests bringing a packed lunch on Tuesdays and Thursdays because that's when the cafeteria serves fish sticks. Whether this means Theodore doesn't like fish sticks because it's meat or because he just doesn't like the taste is uncertain. I'm going to assume the latter. Then at the end of the episode, How You Gonna Keep Him Down on the Farm, the Chipmunks' adoptive grandmother offers to make Theodore fried chicken for dinner, to which he replies, "For the first time in my life, I'm not hungry," after spending most of the episode believing that he had to save a young cow named Clarence from being slaughtered. And Theodore's response in this instance may imply that he has at least eaten meat before. In the Season 7 episode, Merry Christmas, Mr. Carroll, Alvin is given a dream sequence from the Ghost of Christmas Future, where Theodore makes dinner for the whole family, and Alvin eats all of it, and there's no turkey, ham, or anything else with meat on the table. Although, in the 1993 Thanksgiving special, there is a turkey being served for dinner, but that could just be for the Chipmunks' out-of-town relatives if the Chipmunks themselves and Dave aren't vegetarian. In Alvin and the Chipmunks Meet Frankenstein, Alvin is turned into a Looney Tunes-style monster, and to cure him, Simon and Theodore create an antidote using foods found at the buffet table. Of the 4 known ingredients mentioned in the film, all of them were meat or meat-adjacent. Frog legs, caviar, beef tongue, and escargot. This doesn't rule out the Chipmunks being vegetarians, as Alvin was forced to consume the meat-based antidote against his will, and given the circumstances, Simon and Theodore were most likely willing to do whatever it took to cure their brother, even if it went against their normal diet and not bring it up. In Alvin and the Chipmunks Meet the Wolfman, we perhaps get the most direct evidence of vegetarianism in this franchise. After Theodore is bitten by a werewolf, he starts to crave meat and asks for steak for breakfast. Theodore doesn't get to eat breakfast before he's rushed off to school, but when Dave is about to give him his lunch on the way out, he presumes he'll be getting a steak sandwich. But Dave reminds him that he doesn't eat meat. Later in the film, during the song The Monster Out in You, Theodore ransacks the refrigerator and eats a T-bone steak whole and raw. It's unknown if Dave had bought the steak for Theodore after noticing his interest in meat during the earlier scene, or if Dave was already saving that steak for another occasion if he, Simon, or Alvin eat meat instead. I'm going to assume the former. So what Dave said before was a pretty strong verbal suggestion that Theodore at least is a vegetarian, and while I personally don't believe that the Universal films are part of the same continuity as the 80s cartoon, one could say that Theodore decided to become a vegetarian after the events of How You Gonna Keep Him Down on the Farm. In Little Alvin and the Minimonks, there's nothing related to meat shown, but when Lalu and Jeanette are making muffins, there's a carton of soy milk on the counter. This movie takes place in Lalu's house, which is really the Bagdasarian house, so I'm not so sure about this one. Maybe it suggests that Lalu at least excludes dairy from her diet. It doesn't look like any brand of soy milk that I know. It was probably just a prop created for the movie. The reason why I'm especially confused about this one is because I would think that with the movie being filmed in the Bagdasarians' own home, this would be one of the few times their real-life dietary preferences would come into play for whether or not the characters themselves are vegetarian in any way. But I'm getting ahead of myself. In the live-action films, meat is once again never shown, although it is mentioned twice to my knowledge. In the 2007 film, Theodore asks Alvin and Simon, has anyone tried the chocolate meatballs? But this doesn't directly imply meat consumption as much as it simply shows that Theodore has knowledge of what a meatball is or looks like. And I know it seems kind of obvious, but remember, at this point in the movie, they hadn't been in human society for very long, so they probably didn't know what a meatball was out in the forest. Then in the Squeakquel, after Brittany refuses to perform without her sisters, Ian asks them if they like barbecue, though they don't even get a chance to answer before Ian picks them up by their tails and threatens to barbecue them. So this means that if he were serious, it would suggest that Ian does eat meat in the movie continuity, which again, we never see. In the 2015 series, which is what started me down this rabbit hole, every time the Seville family is shown eating dinner, it's something like spaghetti with mushrooms, peas and carrots, which they ate throughout a large portion of Season 1, and perhaps most infamously, salads, especially during Seasons 2 and 3. Although the salads do have slices of hard-boiled eggs, which, depending on your definition of meat, are still included in some vegetarian diets. Even in the Season 3 episode, Pizza Dash, no meat toppings were ever shown or mentioned, not even pepperonis like you might expect, except on the pocket of the Pizza King's shirt and on the logo for the Pizza King restaurant, but those could instead be tomato slices for all I know. This would also include dairy in their diet, since the pizzas do have cheese, and in multiple episodes there are cartons of milk shown that have a cow on them, suggesting that they are actual dairy. But two other curious things of note from early on in the series. In the episode Principal Interest, Alvin implies how the oceans are being depleted of fish due to overfishing, and in the episode Family Spirit, he calls Simon a shrimp cocktail with glasses. It's certainly not evidence that the Sevilles eat seafood, but I just thought it'd be worth pointing out the mention of a meat-related industry. So those are all the moments I could mention off the top of my head, but if I missed any other instances where meat is shown, mentioned, or implied in any of these series, please let me know. From all this evidence, we can assume that in the 50s and 60s era, the main cast of characters did include meat in their diets, while in the 80s, they may have started out that way, but Theodore at least may have decided to become a vegetarian. Minimonks in the live-action films, we don't get too much evidence, but in the 2015 series, they are consistently shown to be lacto-ovo-vegetarians, or vegetarians that include dairy and eggs as part of their diet. With the exception of both the Universal films, the consumption of meat, eggs, and dairy, or the lack thereof, has never really affected the plot of any Alvin and the Chipmunks story. For the most part, it's always just been a background detail, especially in the 2015 series. Considering how much of the show is inspired by the Bagdasarian family's own lives, I think it's important to take their preferences into account. According to Janice Carmen in the How I Built This interview with Guy Raz, she and Ross met at a vegetarian restaurant. So if they weren't vegetarian and didn't cross paths there, the Alvin and the Chipmunks franchise would not continue to exist as it does today. Additional evidence that they are a vegetarian comes from a hilarious video from Michael Bagdasarian on the official Alvin and the Chipmunks YouTube channel, where at one point, Ross asks him for a veggie burger. By the way, I think we need more behind-the-scenes videos like this. More than likely, their decision to adopt a vegetarian lifestyle had something to do with Ross Bagdasarian Sr.'s death by heart attack. I can't remember exactly where, but I think one source says that Armenian food was responsible for his fatal heart attack. And I hate to support this theory, no offense to anyone with Armenian heritage out there, but the country's cuisine is often cited as having some of the least heart-healthy food in the world due to the prevalence of fried meat items, which are high in fat. Another factor for the Bagdasarians, and thereby the Chipmunks, being vegetarian, could be that in the US, there's been a growing vegetarian movement which has become a lot more prominent over the last 50 years, especially along the West Coast, such as in California. And where are the Bagdasarians from again? But let me know in the comments what you think. Are the Chipmunks, Chipettes, and Dave vegetarians? Don't forget that you're also welcome to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already, which will go a long way in helping this channel grow, and let me know if you want more videos like this. If you have a suggestion for an Alvin and the Chipmunks topic that you would like to see an elaboration video on, you can tell me in the comments or on my Discord server, where you can also get sneak peeks at upcoming videos. Oh, and you can also follow me on Twitter at Grandy Tamias. With all that said, I hope you enjoyed, have a nice day, and thank you for your time.